so much, Jesse. Next slide, please. I wanted to first of all thank every one of you guys for being here, especially on a Wednesday evening. I'll start by introducing myself and just letting you know a little bit about why I'm so passionate about mentorship, as well as fostering the next generation of physicians and especially physician leaders. So my name is Dr. Kachiu Lee. I am the Director of BSMD Advising with MedSchoolCoach. Um, I actually went to a combined BSMD program at Northwestern University. And then after that, I did my residency at Brown and I did my fellowship at Mass General. Next slide, please. And so just to kind of give you a little overview of the landscape out there. So based on the data that we have from the 2020 to 2021 application cycles, there were over 53,000 applicants for different medical schools. And at the end of the day, that's an insane number of people. Medical school, getting into medical school is super competitive because you can see that only about 40% of these applicants actually got into medical school, which means that the other 60% of them didn't get in. This doesn't mean that they don't eventually find another way into the healthcare world. Some of them will reapply next year or the year after they strengthen their applications. Some of them will go into other positions within healthcare, like nursing or physician assistants or pharmacy or research. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who want to be doctors. And what we want to do is really help set you or your child up to stand out and to actually be one of those people that get into medical school. Next slide, please. And so some of the application services that we help with are AMCAS, COMAS, the Texas application. These are basically just different types of applications that you need to fill out to get into or to apply to med school. So think about these as kind of like the common app, but on the medical school level. Next slide. And so what I'm specifically going to talk with you about is about the way that you can stand out through your activities and extracurriculars. There's certainly a lot of different components of the medical school application. We don't have enough time tonight to cover all of them, but specifically what we'll do is we'll talk about how you can build your resume, build your activities and extracurriculars so that you can stand out. Next slide. And so as an overview of different types of extracurricular activities, medical school admissions committees will typically categorize your activities into these overall 5 buckets. So there's community service, which means anything that you do to help the community, whether it's volunteering for Habitat for Humanity and building people houses, right? Or volunteering for the American Red Cross and helping out with blood drives. All of those things are considered community service. There's also clinical work, which I think the easiest thing to think about in that category is actually volunteering at hospitals, nursing homes, or other clinical environments where you can interact with actual patients. There's research, and research can be both in the lab, or it could be clinical research, or even nowadays, computer-based research where you work with, you do genetics research or epidemiology type research. And then there's also leadership and shadowing. And with leadership, you can get leadership positions based on any of these other 4 categories. So it's not a set bucket on its own, but it's something that's definitely related to all of these other extracurricular opportunities. And then finally, there's shadowing, which is very important because, again, I always tell people, how can you show people that you want to be a doctor if you've never actually shadowed a doctor or other healthcare provider to see what they do? Next slide, please. And so in addition to kind of the actual activities you can participate in, these are some of the other categories that also have merit with your resume. So teaching relates to mentorship. A lot of our students are tutors, and they will teach younger students or they'll tutor other kids in their community. Awards are a way to show that you are really able to excel in something that you're interested in. These can be academic awards related to medical fields or STEM fields or not related. So you could get, you could win a National History Award, or you can get a gold medal in the National Latin exam. All of those things count to show your perseverance and your ability to excel. Publications and presentations, I think, are really related to research that you do. There are some people who do publications and presentations outside of research, and those would be my students who are very interested in creative writing. So I've definitely had students who have self-published their own book of poetry, or who have written a lot of op-eds to the local newspaper, especially during the time of COVID, offering the view of what this pandemic was like for a teenager or a young adult perspective. And then certainly there are hobbies. So anything that you've spent a lot of time doing, that could be running a 5K or running a 10K, or it could be playing intramural soccer. But these are categories where, or these are activities where you spend a significant time of doing, not like you went and, went running once in your life. And then miscellaneous, anything that doesn't fall into some of these other buckets. Next slide, please. So the best extracurricular activities are ones in which you're really able to reflect on them and put them on paper so that you can explain to others why these extracurricular activities were important to you. And for a lot of my students, I find that that's probably the hardest part, is being able to have that maturity of that self-reflection, to write about them in your essays, and to eventually talk about them in a professional, mature way during your medical school interviews. Next slide. Some of the best extracurricular activities that I look for on a student's resume or on their application is I look for something that they're passionate about, something that they're so engaged with that they have a continual longitudinal commitment. So if I see a student who has 400 hours of direct patient care, they volunteered at a hospital, but they got all 400 hours the summer after their junior year or the summer after their senior year, that makes me think like, I wonder if the student was just doing this at the last minute because they kind of, slummed away the first 3 years of school and then wanted to clean up and have something on their resume. So showing longitudinal commitment is a lot more impressive to me if they got those 400 hours over, say, 4 years. So if they went and volunteered, 4 hours a week, every single week, that is a lot more impressive to me than someone who does it all at once, all over one summer. In addition, that also shows me dedication, right? It's a lot harder to commit to something for 4 years than it is to commit to something for, say, just 3 months over a summer. When it comes to research, we briefly mentioned this before, but obviously the best research is work that produces a presentation or a paper, because that tells me that the student did original work on their own. And finally, letters of recommendation are one of the only ways that admission committee members can have an outside look on what the student is actually like. Everything else they have is from you, right? Your essays, your thoughts, your reflections, but having a letter of recommendation from someone that's worked with you gives me a view on what your personality is actually like, how well you work with other people, and gives me a view on whether I think you'll have the necessary skills to eventually be a doctor. Next slide. And so when you're making your activities list, what I recommend is that you really kind of think about these 5 points and actually start documenting or start recording them even now, like even if you're a freshman or even if you're in 8th grade. It's important to start recording what you've done, where you did it, how many hours you put in, who your point person is, whether that's a volunteer coordinator, whether that's a teacher who's in charge of your club, as well as the takeaway. What was meaningful to you about building houses with Habitat for Humanity? What was the most meaningful thing to you? And what did you enjoy the most about volunteering at that blood drive with the Red Cross? And what this helps you do is when it actually comes time to apply, this helps you organize, one, all the incredible activities that you've participated in, but two, that takeaway about what was most meaningful also will help kind of prepare your mind for being able to put this on paper so that you can remember what it was like freshman year when you were in the moment helping that, first patient who fainted when they got their blood drawn or something like that, and how you felt or how you were able to help them. Next slide. So a lot of our students will do a lot of different things. And what we really look for is we really look for activities that help you grow as a person and that help define you as a person. So those moments or those activities that helped you become who you are today. So for example, with an applicant that we helped who lived abroad and did a lot of non-medical volunteer work, we shaped their activities to also fit their application essays to talk about the theme of diversity, cultural appreciation, and how that will be an asset in medical school and beyond. For the applicant who worked multiple jobs in college, we talked about the importance of work ethic, maturity, and responsibility, especially if working at these multiple jobs came at the expense of being able to participate in some of those clinical activities or research activities that their colleagues might have participated in. And then for the applicant who was an athlete, or specifically the one who was a ballerina and spent so much of her time doing that because that's what she was passionate about, we developed a theme in her essays about dedication and perseverance and how these skills applied to her other extracurriculars. And so you can see how the activities and the extracurriculars that you do really help to define you and really help us to understand who you are as a person and why you're different than just, Joe Schmo or Joe Smith or Jenny Smith down the street, who also might have done similar extracurricular activities as you've done. Next slide, please. When we're looking at clinical work, the best clinical work is one that gives you as direct interaction with patients as possible. And I know that a lot of times based on your age, this might be difficult since they may not give you a lot of direct patient care activities, but it's also perfectly fine to even start just volunteering at the front desk or start, by helping out in the emergency room, giving people blankets. Or bringing them sandwiches or something. I think even those small moments, even if you're not doing actual clinical work with a patient, is very meaningful because it's in those small moments that you learn the communication skills and the ability to work under pressure. Next slide. And so this is another case study or example of a student that we've worked with. And so this applicant worked at like a local free medical clinic that served an underrepresented population in the area. And even though they were very young, because this clinic, because most of these local free clinics are just all staffed with volunteer, there was an opportunity for the applicant to become really deeply involved with helping the clinic run. And because they showed up day after day, again, that longitudinal commitment, they were able to learn more roles in the clinic, take on more roles, and eventually even start training other volunteers and providing resources to patients about other, getting food stamps or finding free dental clinics. Note that these leadership opportunities, right, training new volunteers, providing resources to patients, naturally came out of being passionate and intensely involved with whatever activity the student was spending their time with doing. And so the takeaway point for this student about why this experience helped build their character was that they were really able to learn the communication skills needed to work with others. Next slide. Oftentimes we get asked about research and how much is needed or what most people need or, how can I get involved? And so at a minimum, research is essential because you learn kind of the scientific process of how to really hone in on a hypothesis and test that hypothesis. Ideally, pretty much all students are able to at least participate in a class where they're able to answer a question or tested a hypothesis. whether that was an AP course, whether that was like a college level course over the summer. That's what's required at the minimum. But on average, most of our applicants do have some type of hands-on research. It could be independent research with, a teacher in your AP seminar class. Ideally, it would be research with a local university, a local lab, or something like that, where you're doing actual independent work. Again, it's great to have publications and presentations. It's not required, but again, it would be great to have that. Next slide. And so this is kind of just applying this concept of research to a student that we've had. And so this student was a very strong research candidate, and that was the defining characteristic in their extracurriculars. And so what the student did was they took that experience of working in that research lab over a year, published a paper, and translated that on paper or on their essays to talk about problem solving or critical thinking or dedication, because those were the skills that they took away from this extracurricular activity. Next slide. With leadership, again, with leadership, you will, if you are passionate about an extracurricular, you will eventually rise to the leadership level. Doctors are the leaders of their healthcare team and often beyond. A lot of doctors are now the CEOs, or at least the CMO, Chief Medical Officer, of their hospital or hospital systems. And so what medical schools are looking for is that they're looking for at least, at minimum, at least one leadership experience that is longitudinal. But on average, students have about 3 or more major leadership experiences that have spanned over the course of 3 months, ideally at least a year. And so examples of this would be school groups like HSAFP, which Hari is going to talk with you about. It could also be being involved in some of the leadership opportunities with the Red Cross, like the youth executive boards and their engagement committees. Next slide. And so this is an example of a student who volunteered at an orphanage in India. And when she went home, she didn't just go back to her nice little bubble that she lived in Tampa, Florida. She actually took those lessons and decided that she wanted to make a change and to help others continue this work. And so she created a nonprofit organization that actually raised funds that directly went to benefit this orphanage in India. And again, she was able to translate this onto her essay to talk about taking initiative, not just, going on a medical trip overseas, but really seeing the need based on what she saw at that orphanage in India and coming back to start something and to really make a change. Next slide. And so we're running out of time soon, so I'll talk about, this will be the last one I talk about. But I wanted to really emphasize the importance of physician shadowing. Again, you really do need to shadow a doctor, either an MD or an OD, to see what life is like as a doctor, how they treat their patients. Ideally, it should be with multiple specialties, so you can see the difference between surgery versus pediatrics versus neurology. It is very essential to make sure that you're able to talk about how you can see yourself in the shoes of the doctor you're shadowing when you're eventually a doctor. Next slide. This was a study of a student who spent several weeks shadowing different physicians, and it really the student was really able to translate their experience to talk about what they liked about different aspects of medicine, and eventually get really good letters of recommendation. So finally, just to kind of wrap up this part so that we can make sure we have time to learn about some of the activities offered by the Red Cross, we can skip to the QR code slide 23. I just wanted to really encourage all of you who have further questions or who are interested in this journey of becoming a doctor to reach out to us, scan the QR code. We offer free consults, and on that call, we will be able to actually give you more personalized advice on yourself, on your child, and how we can really make sure they have the strongest extracurricular profile as possible. And so with that, next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Hanna, who is from the American Red Cross. A lot of times when we have, especially high schoolers or parents of high schoolers, I get very common questions about, well, what can we do on this high school level? How can we actually make a difference? And I really wanted to encourage everyone to look into the American Red Cross. Hanna will tell us a little bit more about that because they actually have some of the best programs out there that engage teenagers, experiences that you will not be able to get elsewhere because of age restrictions, things like that. But with that, I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. And thank you all for being here with us tonight. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the regional CEO for the Red Cross here in Northern California. And I'll quickly just touch base on our mission and the work that we do. And then I have a couple colleagues, Jonathan and Colleen, who talk about specifics with youth opportunities as well as health services, because I think that'll be a topic of interest to everybody. So go ahead and hit the next slide. I'll start by saying that our mission is to prevent and alleviate human suffering during the face of emergencies. And the only way that we're able to do that is through the power of our volunteers and the generosity of donors. So we are a nonprofit. We depend on the funds from the American people to make our mission possible, but we are 90% volunteer led. So I was in Hawaii back when the Maui fires started. So even though I'm the CEO, I was reporting to a volunteer. We train our volunteers, we empower our volunteers to take on roles, and 90% of our workforce are volunteers. And again, we've got some amazing youth opportunities. I started as a Red Cross youth in college and started a Red Cross club on my college campus, and then just grew up through the organization. Go ahead and hit the next slide. So we've got 5 main lines of service. The first, and one of the common ones that people know us through, is our disaster relief. We break that up into a cycle. We like to prepare the community, and we do that in a few different ways. We prepare youth. We've got a very cool program that we do for kindergarten to 3rd graders called Pedro the Penguin. There's some fun songs about getting low and going when a fire happens and making the noise that a smoke alarm makes. And then we've got a pillowcase program, which is grades 3 through 5, where we educate youth on home fire safety. And they're our best advocates. They go home, talk to their parents about what they learned, hopefully practice their 2-minute drill to get out of their home. We also talk about coping mechanisms because disasters can be scary. So we do that with youth, and we look for people to get trained to be presenters to go out to those schools to do those. And then for adults, we install free smoke alarms and do home fire safety. We respond to disasters, and most people think of really big disasters like the Maui wildfires and tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes. And that's true, we do those. But more commonly, we respond to home fires. It could be at 2 o'clock in the morning and the fire department will put a fire out. They call us and they let us know that folks need somewhere safe to stay. So we'll give financial assistance, a comfort kit, which includes a toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, and just those bare necessities that when you've lost everything, they're there to help you get through that long road of recovery. And then recovery, we help people with a caseworker to help people get through that long road to recovery, letting them know what other agencies have to offer to help people through the recovery. Sometimes it's our health services volunteers that are helping refill prescriptions. Maybe you had to evacuate your home really quick and you left crutches or a wheelchair or a cane inside your home or your medications, and our health services volunteers help refill those prescriptions. So that's our disaster relief that we do. We'll go ahead and hit the next slide and talk about blood services. So the other line of service that we're most commonly known for is blood services. We represent 40% of the nation's blood supply. We're the largest blood supply for the country. The next biggest is about 20%. And we have a national inventory where we collect blood, make sure local needs are met first, and then we can move blood to wherever it's needed to make sure patients have it when they need it. So we collect blood every 2 seconds. Someone in the United States needs blood. One of those people could be a mother at birth, an innocent person in a car accident, a baby at birth, a burn victim, a cancer patient. So the need for blood is real, and there's no substitute for it. We can't make it, can't manufacture it. We only get it from volunteer blood donors. So I know a lot of your schools may be hosting blood drives, so some really good opportunities to do that. Or if your school isn't, you may be able to host a blood drive in your community as well. Go ahead and hit the next slide. Next is our training services. So we like to train people with life-saving skills. We also have a really great class online on babysitting. So that might be a good course for you all. You may be babysitting siblings or relatives or neighbors. There's a cool course for you to get certified. It's good on your resume. And as you're maybe babysitting folks, could be very helpful for you. But we train on first aid, AED, CPR, lifeguarding, water safety. There's lots of training that we do to prepare people to have those skills in case they need to act in a moment's notice to help people and save lives. Next slide. Next is our international services. So every country, just about every country has a Red Cross or Red Crescent Society. So some of them may be a crescent because oftentimes a cross can be looked at as religious. So for certain countries, may be a different symbol. Every country has the same fundamental principles to do the work that we do, but we do our mission a little bit differently. For example, in Mexico, the Red Cross runs the ambulance systems for the country. Here in America, we talked about the different services that we do. My dad's side of the family is from Jordan. In Jordan, they do a lot of services for elderly. So that's a big focus of the Red Cross there. So we all have the same fundamental principles, different missions, but we all come together to help restore family links. When a family member may have to flee because of conflict, a war, whatever the reason is, and they're looking for a family member, folks can contact the Red Cross, and we will open up a case and try to help them find their family member. Next slide. And last but not least is our line of service that we started out as an organization 140 years ago, and that's service to the armed forces. So we help military members through their whole life cycle as a military member. From the moment they enlist, they go to a local military entrance processing station, or MEPS as we call it, and they sign a contact card with their information, their family's information, and we open up a case to let them know and their family members know everything that we have to offer, which includes emergency communication. So if they're overseas, fighting for our country, they could be on a military base, and someone at home has a birth, or maybe it's sad news, maybe there's a death. We're able to connect them and bring them home during those happy times or those sad times. And then when folks come back from deployment, we help get them ready. We do some resiliency workshops talking about coping and becoming back into the civilian life. And again, we offer that to their family members as well. So that was a quick overview of our lines of service. Got one more slide on diversity, just to show that we are just champions around diversity, and our youth are truly those champions. Our youth are so diverse and help us really embody the communities that we serve. We have some focuses around diversity, around keeping the dialogue going. So we have some team member resource groups. Most companies have employee resource groups. Ours are team members because we're so volunteer driven. That includes our volunteers. So that might be a way for folks to get involved. We want to increase our workforce diversity. We, again, want to reflect the communities that we serve. So we're always looking for more volunteers from diverse communities to help us work alongside us to serve our mission. And then we want to make sure we're executing our mission equitably across the country and everything that we're doing. We've got some great initiatives like the Sickle Cell Initiative, which affects the African American and the Latino community significantly. And the only therapy for that is blood transfusion. So just wanted to highlight diversity. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan to talk about more specifics with our youth services.
Right. Thank you, Hanna, and very glad to be here with all of you today, folks. My name is Jonathan Bernier, and I have the pleasure to serve on Hanna's team here with the Northern California Coastal Region as the Regional Volunteer and Youth Services Officer. What that means in a nutshell is that my team is responsible for recruitment, placement, but also overall support of all of our volunteers, adult or youth, across this region. Big mandate, as Hanna mentioned, our volunteers are very much the reason why we can provide the services we provide here at the American Red Cross. So for me, it is a deep pleasure and privilege to be able to serve all of our volunteers and our youth programs. When I started with this organization about 12 years ago, it was as an adult volunteer, but supporting our youth programs at the time. So it is very much a pleasure for me to be able to continue to support youth services in all the ways I'm going to outline today. So I want to talk about three main methods of engagement of youth volunteers through the American Red Cross, through our Red Cross clubs, our youth executive boards and engagement committees, and then in direct mission service. So the brief overview of these three sort of pathways for engagement with the Red Cross. If we can go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about our Red Cross clubs first, which I would say is our primary method of engagement of youth volunteers. So in this region, as an example, we have about 100 high school, middle school, college Red Cross clubs that engage youth volunteers. And these clubs are set to operate a little bit like semi-autonomous units. What I mean by that is that clubs basically reach out to a local chapter in their local region in order to start a Red Cross club. And from there, the officers get to collect their own memberships and they can start planning and executing events in and around their school campus or in their local communities. We do have some pre-packaged events that the clubs can run that basically, easy club events for folks to tackle, but we do leave some room for youth to sort of craft their own events based on the needs of community, as long as it is within Red Cross mission scope, right? So there is some avenues here for creativity and supporting your local communities to Red Cross clubs as well. We do support clubs through my team specifically. I have a dedicated youth engagement lead in our region and a team of youth volunteers that also support youth and help our clubs stay engaged. So there's one engagement method. If we can move to the next slide, I'll talk very briefly about our youth executive boards and committees. So contrary to Red Cross clubs, our youth executive boards and committees are more tied to a chapter, not necessarily a school. And what those teams are looking at is there are teams of youth leaders who are looking at ways to drive up engagement of youth into mission delivery and generate sort of far-reaching youth events that will allow our Red Cross youth volunteers to engage with the Red Cross mission. So whereas school clubs are more focused on a specific school and maybe a specific community, our youth executive boards are basically looking at youth engagement sort of with a wider lens. So we're talking larger events that will reach multiple schools, entire counties or territories, things like our Youth Action Campaign, which is an international services focused program that is very successful and aims at creating projects in and around international services issues. Very well attended every year and has representation from many of our schools in our regions all throughout the country. As you can see on the slide, leaders and committees are not tied to specific schools, and they can create those engagement and pathways for youth engagement. So the goal is to continue to help youth get engaged directly with the Red Cross mission and find avenues to support all of the lines of service that Hanna mentioned earlier. I think I was seeing in the chat earlier somebody from the LA region mentioning for example, disaster services volunteers have to be 18 and up. That's a requirement of deployment, but there are other avenues that youth can support disaster services in other ways, either in admin roles and support roles, whether it's canvassing for sound the alarm events, raising awareness for some of our other preparedness programs, supporting disaster operations through admin roles, not on deployments. So our youth executive board sort of help drive that a little bit and create avenues for engagement. And if we go to the next slide, this is sort of a connect one, which is direct mission service. So youth do not need to be part of an executive board or a club in order to engage with the Red Cross. A great example, Hanna mentioned earlier, our blood services line of business. Any youth 16 and up can serve in blood services as a blood donor ambassador, supporting blood drives either at fixed sites or out in the community. This is just one example where youth directly into our lines of service. We also have a host of other opportunities that are open to youth, that are youth friendly, whether it's in blood services, disaster, as I just mentioned, service to the armed forces and international, even teams like mine in volunteer and youth services, or our communications team, right, which are more internal facing teams, but have opportunities for youth as well. So with these, this is more individual engagement as opposed to group engagement. I know we've had questions today about some of you who may be looking at beefing up your extracurriculars, right, and want to participate in service delivery. If you're not part of a Red Cross club at your school, if that sounds less interesting to you, this is another avenue where you can come and do some great work with the Red Cross. I personally feel a very strong connection to our youth and our youth programs. Like I said, I've been here for the past 12 years. I keep in touch with some of our volunteers who used to be youth volunteers that I met when they were in high school. They're now young professionals, right, working post-college. They usually come and hit me up for coffee after they visit the area, and connecting with them, seeing that progression, seeing them become young philanthropists has been absolutely amazing for me. So if this is something you were considering, I highly encourage you to join us and come join the Red Cross family. So with that, I will pass the baton here to Colleen, our colleague here with the Northern California Coastal Region, a little bit about nursing and health professionals with the Red Cross. Colleen, are yours.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, despite the name tag on my picture here, I'm not Hanna, as you well know. Colleen Sasso. I'm a disaster health services, my primary activity with the Red Cross, and I've been a volunteer since 2009. Wanted to share with you some of what disaster health services is all about and what volunteers in that activity are responsible for. But to do that, I want to just give you a touch of historical fact about disaster health services and how it came to be. Many of you may know that Clara Barton is lauded as the founder of the American Red Cross, an idea which emerged as a result of her work volunteering with the International Committee of the Red Cross. And it was back in 1881 when Clara actually brought the Red Cross to the United States. She was not educated as a nurse, but learned what she did and applied to her clients on the battlefield, actually in the field. Nursing service was actually begun by Jane Delano in 1909. And the core values of caring and advocacy, with a focus of meeting the community health needs of individuals through our inclusive ethical leadership, and in disaster events through all phases of the disaster cycle, is what we do in preparing for disaster, responding, and then during the recovery phase. Next slide, please. So yes, nurses have been an essential part of the American Red Cross for over 100 years. In addition to disaster services, we have melded with all of the other service lines that Hanna and Jonathan have both mentioned in contributions. We contribute to preparedness, health, and safety services for the community, in blood services by supervision, education, and some program planning. And we provide service in leadership positions on serving as board members, program directors, and advisory committee members of various parts of the Red Cross throughout the United States. Health services volunteers are not only involved in direct client services, but contribute by teaching and developing courses. We assume management and supervisory roles and serve as consultants and subject matter experts while working to increase our capacity to serve the affected communities that have been, in fact, affected by disasters. Next slide, please. Many of our health service volunteers are retired, licensed health professionals who want to continue helping others. Disaster Health Service functions as a registered nurse-led model of nursing in the community, where we help to guide our clients to navigate their community resources. We are there to supplement the existing community service delivery systems as they begin recovery processes following a disastrous event. We work with our clients to mitigate adverse consequences and to maintain their optimum level of health. Disaster Health Service volunteers utilize their professional competencies of critical thinking, assessment, technical skills, illness and disease management, information gathering, and healthcare technologies to accomplish these tasks. We do this in our shelter care, assessment of functional and access needs, disease surveillance, chronic care, and care for minor illnesses and injuries that may occur. We replace prescriptions, as Hanna had said, and glasses and essential medical supplies when people have had to suddenly evacuate from their homes and come in their new home, temporary home, in our shelters. We provide psychosocial assessment and assistance to our clients also. We work closely with all shelter workers and disaster mental health, spiritual care, recovery casework, and our shelter resident transition teams to help the clients recover and move on from their new second home. Disaster health services today may include registered nurses, medical doctors, LVNs, physician's assistants, advanced practice nurses, nurse practitioners, and EMTs. Our program addresses the unmet disaster-related health needs of our clients and the families and the entire community in which the disaster occurs. Our goals are to alleviate those immediate health needs, mitigate any long-term consequences as a result, and maintain their optimum level of health through our support of the clients and their own self-determination. Next slide, please. As I stated earlier, our standards are focused on our core values of caring and advocacy. We would not be successful if we did not work closely and tirelessly with our partners in the community. Those partners include some of the public health departments, medical reserve corps, disaster medical teams that come out when we need help, and our local, state, and tribal territorial resources. Disasters affect all community members, and we must be prepared to assist them in facing the challenges in their recovery process. So we work with our partners in facing those challenges for the communities and assist them to garnish their community resilience for their entire communities' common good. Next slide, please. In addition to providing service to the clients devastated by such personal loss and in the midst of disaster health services has an obligation to care for our Red Cross workforce. This includes ensuring volunteers are in their best possible health prior to them accepting a deployment assignment and its potentially hazardous conditions while maintaining their health status during deployment operations and maintain their steady state health regimen. So this is just a touch of what we do in our activity that keeps us extremely busy. And I hope this has been giving you some idea of what disaster health services and the Red Cross is all about. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? We'll take that as a yes. My name is Hari Ganesh, and I'm the founder of the High School Alliance of Future Physicians, or HSAFP. I'm actually a current senior at Dublin High School, so I've been in your shoes literally just a few months ago. And in the fall, I'll be going to the University of Southern California, or USC, for neuroscience in the pre-med track. So yes, like you all, I am a high school student interested in medicine. And today I'm here to talk to you about why HSAFP is the all-in-one extracurricular that you need, and why I wish something like this existed when I was still relatively new to high school and the admissions process. Next slide, please. So before I get into it, let me just give you a quick overview of what to expect and what I'll be covering. First, I'm just going to explain what HSAFP is. I know a lot of students and parents out there might not know our name, and that's totally okay. Well, now you do. HSAFP, High School Alliance of Future Physicians. And the reason for that is because we're such a relatively new club. We actually started less than a year ago, but we have grown incredibly fast. And a huge part of that is due to our collaborators like the United States Army, MedSchoolCoach, the Red Cross, just to name a few. Then, like Dr. Lee mentioned, there's specific things you have to do in your college admissions profile, activities that you have to do that'll help you stand out. And so I'll explain how HSAP can help you do just that. From there, it's pretty self-explanatory. We have a network of physicians and advisors that provide information through HSAP to U.S. students. So to access all of those resources, you have to start a chapter, and that's part of our selective leadership program. Or if there's a chapter already at your school, you can join that. And honestly, from one student to another, HSAP is a really good opportunity. You can learn about medicine while also enhancing your college applications and resume all at the same time. Next slide. So just a little background on HSAP and who we are. We're a nationwide club chapter organization with high school club chapters all over the United States, and our goal is to guide high school students on their journey towards a career in medicine through free resources and access to real practicing physicians in the field. Obviously, as a high school senior myself, I don't have the credibility nor the experience to mentor students who are literally just a few years younger than me. So you're probably wondering how HSAP can help you or your child. And that's through our network of former admissions officers, college advisors, writing advisors, researchers, medical students, and real practicing physicians, like I mentioned earlier. So by joining HSAFP or starting and becoming a president of a club chapter at your school, you'll gain access to information from these professionals and also the other opportunities that we offer, which will ultimately, 1, help you learn about medicine and see if it's the right career path for you, 2, receive college application support from credible, knowledgeable experts, and 3, gain hands-on medical experience through workshops like Stop the Bleed, which I'll talk to you about in a little, or CPR and suturing. Next slide. So by joining HSAFP and being part of a chapter or starting a local chapter at your high school, some of the opportunities that are available to you are mentorship from pre-med college students at the top universities of the nation, workshops like I mentioned before, and I'll get into in a little bit, volunteering and shadowing opportunities, which are definitely really important for your college applications, and competitions with national awards through our conferences that we'll be hosting late in the 24 to 25 school year. In just a few slides soon, I'll talk to you about how you can be a part of HSAFP, and that means either starting a local chapter at your school, leading it and being the chapter president, or if there's already a chapter at your school, you can become a member. But you can't become a member of HSAFP if there already isn't a chapter at your school, but that means you do have the opportunity to start one, which is actually one of the top leadership extracurricular opportunities that you can participate in, because you are leading this entire group at your school. We'll also teach you about the entire college applications process. So if you don't have a sibling or parent who's familiar, through our webinars with admissions advisors and doctors, you'll learn about the entire process from the start to end, from things like test scores to college essays. Next slide. So based on Dr. Lee's presentation, I put this together, and she mentioned that you have to have a few key things to stand out, which you can see on the slide. By joining HSAFP, you can hit almost all these checkboxes, which is why when I say HSAFP is the all-in-one extracurricular, I really do mean it. You don't have to search individually for all these opportunities. They're all in one area here as HSAFP. Say you don't know if you're fully committed to medicine, you can participate in our shadowing program and learn about the different specialties. Or maybe you might have a strong application already, but don't have any awards on your college applications. So you can participate in our competitions through our national conferences. Or maybe you're a freshman or someone who doesn't have any real or you don't have like an admissions profile yet. You don't have many extracurriculars. And so HSAP can help you build that all at once, and you won't have to search individually for shadowing, and then find a different club for leadership, and then a different club for awards. It's all in one area. Next slide. One of the main things that makes HSAP stand out is our support in the admissions process. Through our network of professionals, we help students of all different experience levels. Some may not even know how to apply to college and what the Common Application Platform is, and that's what we're here for. We'll go over all of that, and it'll be perfectly timed with the admissions timeline. And what I mean by that is, for example, in June, incoming seniors, which is the class of 2025, should start writing their Common Application Personal Statement. So something HSAP would do is host a webinar dedicated just for that on the Common Application Personal Statement, how to write it, what makes it stand out, just tips, kind of things like that. Or in December, when you get your admissions decisions back from your early decision school, and say you get rejected, obviously, hopefully you don't, but say you do, we can show you how to deal with that and improve your application for your regular decision schools. And if you don't know what I just said and have no clue what the difference between early decision, regular decision application is, we'll teach you all of that for free, brought to you by credible experts with multiple years of experience in the field. And the best part of all is our network consists of these professionals who have experience sitting on admissions committees. So this means the information you get won't be the average stuff you find on YouTube, but the real authentic information from the same people who are literally reading your college applications and evaluating you as a student. Next slide. So now you're probably wondering, how do I access all these resources? As I mentioned before, if there isn't already a chapter at your school, then you have the amazing opportunity to start an HSAP chapter at your school with our full support. If you're not sure if there's a chapter at your school, then look at our page, hsafp.org/start. Jesse, could you please put that in the chat? And then read to see if you're able to commit your time. The most important part is, you're able to commit your time. It'll be about 1 to 2 hours per week, so not that much. And we are looking for highly motivated and passionate students. So not someone who just, wants a leadership position, but someone actually willing to work for it. And in return, we'll help you do that. And then go to our contact form and say that you want to start a chapter. Make sure you fill out the contact form with accurate information so that we can get back to you quickly. So make sure, like, when you put in your phone number, it is, your correct phone number. So just double check that information. And I know starting a club chapter may be really daunting, especially if you've never had experience before, but there's absolutely no need to worry about that when working with HSAFP. Unlike most chapter organizations out there, we provide personal support to our chapter leaders through frequent calls, meetings, and messages on how to start, grow, and maintain your club chapter. So even if that means even if you never started a club before and you don't have much leadership experience, then HSAP is still right for you, because we do help you with all of that. And one thing I want to mention is that we have a team dedicated just to supporting chapter leaders, and you'll be paired with a chapter setup representative to help you along the way. These chapter setup representatives are current college students that are highly experienced and thoroughly vetted, and they've even started clubs themselves, which means they know what they're talking about and they can help you every step of the way. Next slide. Last thing, just a quick chapter case study. It's just two clubs that I wanted to mention. The first one is there is a freshman that I worked with. She had no leadership experience before, and one of our chapter setup representatives got in contact with her, and they taught her how to manage her officer team, because when you start a club, you have to have some amount of officers. That means you need a vice president, a secretary, treasurer, project lead. So we taught her how to manage those people, which means she's leading her own team now. She can say that on her resume, and she's leading this club at her school. And we taught her how to recruit members at her school using our best practices. And now she has a club with over 115 members, which is way above average. This is a really good leadership extracurricular because, one, she's leading this group of people, she's managing a team as well, and she's hosting she's hosting events. Now she knows how to lead chapters on her own, do fundraisers, webinars, workshops, and host bi-weekly meetings. And another last thing I want to mention is one of our schools that we have an HSAP chapter at called Royal High School in Simi Valley, California, is hosting this hands-on in-person Stop the Bleed training with U.S. Army medics. So this chapter lead is working with us, HSAP, our national board, and we're kind of acting like as a bridge between this chapter lead and the United States Army. So that means we won't be taking care of all of it, which means the chapter lead actually has the opportunity to work with these people and do this on their own with our support. So they still, get the experience through all of that. And now this chapter lead can say, like, hey, look, I have this impactful community event that spans multiple cities, because this event is open to the nearby cities, is a great resume activity for this chapter lead. And they also get to build their personal network because they are working with people from the US Army, right? They get these connections. So if you're interested in doing something similar, you have the support of HSAP Executive Board. And so you can start a chapter today. If you go to the next slide, you can scan the QR code. And then if you need personal one-on-one support, you can always book a meeting with MedSchoolCoach, because something that HSAP doesn't offer is that in-depth personal support. Because we are such a large organization, we do have webinars and we do support students, but it's not the kind of one-on-one support that MedSchoolCoach provides. That's it.
Thank you so much, Hari, and thank you to Dr. Lee, the American Red Cross team, for the wonderful presentation. We have a couple of questions that have come up throughout the presentation, so I'll just kind of go back. So Dr. Lee, one question that came up is, what if someone didn't really realize that they wanted to go into medicine until junior or senior year? Or sometimes a lot of programs won't allow you to volunteer or participate until you're 16. I know you mentioned longevity and longitude. Would you recommend that they still move forward with these programs, given that they're only doing it maybe for junior and senior year?
Mhm. So absolutely. I think it's commonly known that a lot of volunteering or clinical volunteering opportunities aren't available until you're 16, which for many people could be in junior year. Again, I think you are you're focused, you're seeing the tree and not the forest. You're focusing only on that clinical experience, but you can have longitudinal experiences in any of those 5 to 6 categories that I talked about, right? You can have longitudinal experience in hobbies. So the example of the ballerina, right? You can have longitudinal experiences in community service. So participating in the Red Cross. When you're talking about longitudinal experiences, you want to show passion for whatever you're doing, and longitudinal passion for that 1 or 2 type of activities.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. The next question, we're going to hop over to the American Red Cross team. There were a couple questions that came up regarding, the National Youth Council. So Hanna or Jonathan, do either of you mind giving some more information on how students can get involved with the National Youth Council for the larger audience?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually sat on the National Youth Council and was an advisor many years ago. So what I would say and encourage folks is to get involved with their local chapter, because folks who apply for the National Youth Council, it's because they're doing an amazing job at their local level, then to get amplified to the national level. The National Youth Council is a group of 13 youth from across the country that advocate for youth programs and services across the organization. But again, it's the folks at the local level that really get involved, that stand out, who then apply for and get chosen to be on the National Youth Council. Jonathan, anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it very beautifully. I think, like Hanna mentioned, the National Youth Council tends to be sort of a next step in engagement for a lot of our volunteers. It's technically open to youth, high school and up. I would say a lot of our National Youth Council members tend to be college freshmen and up, right? For that exact reason. They're usually folks that have served either on clubs or on youth executive boards and have demonstrated leadership with the Red Cross for a period of time, and then sort of get to escalate that leadership at the national level, helping to direct some of our youth programs.
Thank you, Hanna and Jonathan. The next question we actually have is for Hari. Hari, can you talk more about, some students ask, if I'm a junior, is it too late to start an HSAFP chapter? What would you recommend?
You can start a chapter at any grade level, right? So if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, then yeah, you can obviously start a chapter. The only one thing that I have to mention, because I just have to mention, is because when you're an incoming senior, so you're junior right now and you're going to become a senior next year, after December, I know after college applications, a lot of seniors don't like to continue their activities anymore, like senioritis. So if you are going to start a chapter as a incoming senior, make sure you are willing to commit your time even after you finish your college applications and finish off the year strong. And then one thing I want to address is I saw a question about what's the time commitment for starting an HSAP chapter. It'll be about 1 to 2 hours a week. The only thing is when you first start your chapter, you have to find a teacher advisor and you have to recruit members, all like that setup, things that go into setup that'll be a bit more than an hour or two per week. But since you do have an entire, leadership team, you have a secretary, you have a project lead, someone to manage, all the events you're hosting at your high school, it should only be about 1 to 2 hours a week split between.
Thank you, Hari. Dr. Lee, the next question I have for you is, what if a student has a lot of leadership hours and commitments that aren't maybe so focused on medicine or, in the healthcare field? What would you recommend? Would you recommend for them to continue these activities or slowly start switching over into activities in the healthcare field?
So if it's an activity that you're passionate about, then by all means, please stay and continue doing those activities. It's still important to gain some exposure to the healthcare field, so supplement those activities with some volunteering, some shadowing, but don't stop those activities completely. One of my best students was a very, very talented pianist, and he talked about how through piano, he learned the art of nonverbal communication. He learned the art of how to really affect a person's emotions just by the way he played music. And how powerful is that in the story, especially in the world of medicine when you're working with people and there's so many ways of communication beyond just the words you say.
Definitely, that makes sense. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Hanna, I know you mentioned, you were part of the Red Cross in college. One of the questions we have is, how can it continue being involved with the American Red Cross in college? And so can you shed some light on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. There's even more opportunities for college volunteers because of the age, limitations. My Red Cross Club when I was in college hosted blood drives on campus. We did CPR trainings. And we hosted fundraisers to raise funds for the Red Cross. So we got involved in lots of different ways. And that's our goal. And we want folks that join our organization to become lifelong donors and supporters and volunteers. We don't want you to do a couple years in high school and fall off. As I look at youth as the future of our organization, our future leaders. So we want, encourage folks to get involved and to continue on. We tend to see lots of folks drop off after high school or college because there isn't a club, but you can start one. We've got a lot of great resources on our website on how to start a club in a box, and a lot of great activity guides to help with kind of all the tools and resources you need in one spot.
Amazing. Thank you, Hanna. Hari, the next question I have for you is, what made you start, HSAFP? What inspired you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it all comes back to when I said HSAFP is the all-in-one extracurricular, because as a high school student myself, I knew I had to participate in, volunteering, shadowing, research, and it took me a lot of time to find my first research opportunity with a professor. I spent hours cold emailing every day, and eventually when I was about to give up, I luckily got one. But the thing with HSAP is it's all here for you students in one area. You don't have to, find a different organization for volunteering or a different organization for shadowing. It's all in one area ready for you. And, that's what I really think makes HSAP stand out.
Amazing. Thank you, Hari. Now that we're a little past the hour, I'm just going to ask, Dr. Lee, American Red Cross, and Hari, one more question. So Dr. Lee, last question for you is, let's say a student doesn't have enough leadership hours or volunteering hours. Would you recommend the student to compensate for that for extra hours in another category?
So that's a tough question, because I really do think that if you have spent longitudinal time committing to something, a leadership position will open up. I think that as a physician or a future healthcare provider, you really do need to show leadership skills. And so I would really kind of brainstorm with you to think about, how can we create a leadership position out of something that you're already doing, instead of trying to start a new position or new extracurricular to quote unquote compensate for lack of leadership experience.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Hanna, last question for you is, logistically, what's the best way to get started and engage with the American Red Cross? A lot of students feel like maybe everyone is involved with their American Red Cross. So how do they take their Red Cross experience and make it stand out on their application and, in their journey?
Yeah, so the first thing would be to go to redcross.org and click on the link to become a volunteer. What we'll do is set up a screening interview to hear what interests, what skills folks have, and then get you engaged. So that's one way. If you want to start a Red Cross club, start touching base with an advisor at school to get the ball rolling, and getting folks engaged and interested. Our website, again, has lots of great resources on there, but that'd be the first step, is to officially become a volunteer.
Gotcha. Thank you, Hanna. Last question, Hari, is what's a quick overview on, setting up a chapter? What does it entail?
Yeah, sure. So honestly, what I'm gonna say is kind of like a duplicate of what's on our website, hsafp.org/start. So you can look at that after. But first, you would think about if you want to start a chapter or not, if you're able to dedicate your time. If you are, then you would go to our contact form and say that you're interested in starting a chapter. And from there, a chapter setup representative will contact you. These are one of our college students who have set up chapters before, and they know what they're talking about. And then from there, you would have to find your officer. So that would be you would be the president. You need a vice president, a treasurer, secretary, and project lead. This is all outlined on our website, by the way, if you forget. And then after that, you'd sign and fill out our bylaws, which are just, different things that, kind of like what you agree to, and that your club will meet at least one time per month, and different things that HSAFP offers, just like kind of like the ground rules of HSAFP. And then from there, you'd also have to find a teacher advisor, because when you hold meetings on your campus, you need a teacher to supervise, and you need a room to meet in. So that's what the teacher advisor will do. From there, we'd help you with member recruitment. So that means recruiting your members. Like one of our chapters, they started recruitment about 3 weeks ago for a chapter in the next year, 24-25, and they already have 115 members, which is great. So we'll help you with that. And then from there, we'll also help you set up events, like how at Royal High School, we're doing a Stop the Bleed event, and we'll connect you with all the different resources that we offer.
Amazing. Thank you, Hari. So that concludes our presentation tonight. Again, if your question didn't get answered, I put my email into the chat. Please email me at Jessie, JESSIE.Khan, KHAN, at MedSchoolCoach.com, and I'll make sure that your questions get answered. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Lee, to the American Red Cross, and to Hari for your time today and for this amazing presentation. Just an FYI, everyone will receive a recording of the presentation 24 hours after. You'll get an email from Zoom. And if you have any questions in regards to the presentation itself, my email will also be in that email. So feel free to just reply and I'll get your message. So thank you again, everyone. And, we hope to work with you, whether it's through American Red Cross, HSAFP, or MedSchoolCoach. So thank you for joining us, and hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you.